It's located in the southeast of England, just north of Gatwick. And perhaps, the game-changing part of it really is what lies underneath, and that's a very thick sequence of oil-bearing shales and limestones that we sort of call tight oil. We're dealing with quite a pervasive type of deposit over our area. I know that's 55 square miles, but I think more importantly, these deposits extend over 1,200 square miles or more of the Weald. So if we can put a commercial development together, then clearly, you can have incremental step-outs over quite a large area. This type of oil deposit very much depends on being able to drill your wells almost back to back, so it becomes very much like an industrialized process, because that's how you get the improvements in costs and efficiencies. The flow at the start of the year when you put the well on compared to the flow at the end of that year can decline by 60 or 70% or so. So generally you have to drill a lot of wells close to each other so you can maintain a certain level of production. Potential to actually increase the flow rate using horizontal and stimulation is very considerable. I mean, we definitely come back to this well. We want to put it onto a much longer term production test. The biggest issue we have, and in fact the whole of the industry has in the UK onshore, is the time it takes to get permissions to do anything. Hopefully we're meeting with the government fairly shortly in the coming weeks on a quite a high level to see if we can try and fast track this process.
So, why are we so concerned? The chemicals used and produced as part of well operations are toxic to organic life, causing cancers and other illness. Companies inject solutions into the earth to dissolve rocks and allow oil to flow. In the ground, water picks up naturally occurring radioactive materials and volatile organic compounds. Not all of the water returns to the surface, and even industry experts are not entirely sure what happens to it. The produced water is so contaminated that it cannot be treated and is permanently removed from the water cycle. If the water finds geological faults where it can migrate to aquifers, it can contaminate drinking water supplies. Every site is situated on unique geology which may have fault lines undetectable to even modern logging tools, and one safe well operation does not mean all wells are safe. Oil and gas companies would like us to believe that the rocks beneath our feet are layered like a sponge cake. This is simply not true. As formations settle, there are natural faults created, some of these confined to a localized area, and some stretch for miles in any direction. Natural faults and fractures are migration paths for contamination.
Well, the first I knew about it, someone informed me, somebody on the camp informed me that there was a bit of a noxious fume up at the site. So what I did was I walked up there and I walked along the footpath, and it was literally like walking into a wall of smell. It really did kind of hit you. It wasn't so much that it was a pungent smell, it was more of a total sensory experience where you were just kind of hit by something, all your senses, whether that was your lungs, your nose, it was very, very noticeable. And what I did then, I walked back down to the gate, and I asked one of the police liaison officers to come back with me. And I didn't tell her what the situation was. I didn't tell her what to expect. I said, I'm just very concerned about something that I believe, is coming from the camp. Would you like to walk up there? And she had exactly the same experience as me. It was literally like walking into this smell, this kind of, this gaseous fume. You could really feel it was different, and it would come and go. But anyway, and she actually phoned it into the EA because she was so concerned. That smell spread, that effect that it was having on people spread, and it affected the horses on the equestrian centre and the people that worked there. Horses had, sort of froth at the mouth, stuff like that. Other people had nosebleeds. I didn't have a nosebleed, but I did have headaches, and my chest, felt pretty bad on each occasion that this happened. And one of the interesting things was that when we spoke to people who had access to the site manager and who expressed a concern, what we'd experienced had completely tied into when they vented the tanks.
This was the first of several holes we noticed in drainage ditches around the site which were emanating water from the ground. Some lasted weeks, others only for hours. 2 weeks later, the same hole tested positive for combustible gases. Five weeks after we noticed the first hole, it finally slowed down. When it did, we could see an oily sheen on the surface and a red sediment underneath. Another hole to the north did exactly the same thing.
One more time. And further up the stream here, there's no flow, there's no milky white substance, there's no black oil slick underneath. Okay, we're at the hole where we were at witnessing water bubbling up from the ground some weeks ago. Now, as you can see, the hole itself is largely full of sediment. There are oily patches around, and there's also this black ooze running down the hill. The smell is largely gone. The water has largely stopped protruding. There is this sandy mix. And there's an oily sheen, or a rainbow sheen on the surface, a little bit of a skin there.
The incident that really sticks in my mind is when, in the hours following them removing the drill head, which we could see that they'd done because you can see over the fence, and we were kind of monitoring that. Within a couple of hours of that, water started to gush up and out of fissures in the ground because it was quite dry. It hadn't rained for probably about a week at that point. And there was water actually gushing out of rabbit holes along the side of the footpath. That would be on the kind of like the southwest side. It's actually flowing out. From that point there. This is on the footpath alongside the site. I've not seen water coming out of this part of the public footpath before. But that was something that really concerned us, and I think there was subsequent overflowing of this fluid, which smelt a little bit of diesel, I've got to admit, if I think about it, and that some of that was kind of brown and oily, and it flowed into a sort of a little tributary, that stream that runs into the mole just down about half a mile down the road, or no, it's probably about a mile down the road. So yeah, that was the one that really concerned me, because you could smell the diesel and you could see water coming out of rabbit holes. So it's not particularly good sign, I would have thought. Yeah.
It was the 11th of January when the pipes came in, the drilling pipes. And the night working started soon after that. I think it was the 13th or the 14th of January, the first time. And so I wrote an email to the council to let them know and ask them about this. What were the pipes for? Why was there being work done at night? And they emailed me back, I think it was on the 18th. So they checked with the HSC, who allowed them to do that work because of health and safety situation. So they had some, as it later turned out, hydrocarbons bypassing an isolation plug. And by the way, the EA were never notified about that because I asked them afterwards, so they don't know about this. I think what was probably the most interesting, obviously, aside from the fact that they didn't, as the council now said, they didn't have the planning permission to do the drilling, which we know now they've done. The most, what bothered me was that we told the council about the pipes coming in. We gave them our worries, and the council also were aware of a potential problem because they had written letters to Angus Energy in September and December to tell them, guys, you cannot drill. And so, they knew there might be an issue. We told them there's pipes coming in, there's all of this happening, and they went to the site on the 16th of January, which was right before the drilling, and again, that visit concluded there was nothing there that they could act upon. So it was a workover rig. There was no signs on surface that the drilling was about to happen. So I suppose that's a limit in how you can police this. When they started drilling, one of the EA reports says the 21st of January, the OGA website says the 20th of January, and I think both of these dates are reported by Angus Energy. So they're not actually verified by anybody, I don't think. Then there was the smell. That was on the 21st of January. So I went out in the evening because this was when the night working was in full swing, because it was happening from the 14th and then the 25th. So the 21st was right in the middle, and I went out to check on the area. It was obviously winter evening, nobody outside, and I could smell this. It was a chemical, acidic, quite strong at times, but it was coming on and off because the site is quite far from the road. It's about half a kilometre, so depending on the wind, I guess, I could smell it and then it would go away. But I could definitely smell something that doesn't belong to a rural area. It's not the kind of smell, and I'm out a lot, I run a lot, and I know what the smells are. So I reported this to a few places, the council, the EA, the gas board. The gas board came around an hour later, but they couldn't smell anything anymore. The EA, what happened with the EA is that they gave me a call. It was probably about a week later, if not later than that. And I asked them subsequently after what they've done about this, and they said we've asked Angus Energy what the smell was, and they told us they've done an investigation. They spoke to the farmer, and there was nothing to worry about, and that's how they left it. So they didn't actually visit the site, and obviously I don't know how you could verify a smell that comes and goes, and so Anyway, that was the smell, and I could never, I came back the next day and then I couldn't smell it anymore. But we know on the 21st of January, this is when the drilling was going on, so perhaps it was something to do with that. So, and the plumes of smoke on the 18th of January and the 30th of January, I asked the EA after all of this has happened. So I've been in communication with them, and I continue. They don't know. They don't have a record actually of this. Nobody has reported this, and nor did the company or anybody. And the point in all of this is that we wouldn't have known. It's the people that need to report this for anything to happen. And I think even the night working, it was because we asked the council what was going on that then they asked, Angus Energy, who had to explain themselves, and that information then went to the HSE, who said, we've got some kind of situation, let's allow them working 24 hours. But if not for the people actually raising this concern, then I'm not sure what would have happened, and whether anybody would have made the record of this. So this shows how important it is for people like you, the count, to be there and to look at this, scrutinize this, and to let other people know so they can raise concerns, you can raise concerns, and so that this actually gets some kind of scrutiny.